Sewing always creates magical moments for me. I can take a couple of flat pieces of fabric, sew them together while adding a few folds here and there, stitch them with decorative threads and stitches, and end up with a beautiful finished garment. Today, we are going to learn more about two of my favorite magical sewing techniques, release tucks and Madeira. I am also fascinated by technology that has made it possible for us to print our own fabrics and create machine embroidery to be used for our scrapbooks. We are going to have so much fun in my sewing room today. I think it is time for us to enjoy the sewing magic together. These are the most fabulous lounging pajamas made out of a green and pink silk charmeuse, and you are going to love the sewing details. Look at the little straps. It's elastic covered with pink charmeuse, the pink piping, pink charmeuse, and the most elegant machine embroidery with little rosebuds and a gorgeous pink rose in the middle. More pink piping and release tucks. This is what we're going to be doing. One of the techniques in just a few minutes. Then more machine embroidery, and I want you to look at the perfection with which this lace has been shaped into the scallops on silk charmeuse. That's not really an easy thing to do, but my guest is going to tell you how. All right, now look at more machine embroidery, and once again that wonderful detail of the scalloped lace. Okay, let's look at these release tucks. First of all, if your pattern does not have tucks, as our pattern did not, you have to draw them on. The second thing, if you have drawn on the tucks, and you know they're going to take up a little bit of space, so it is necessary to allot some more fabric because we're going to sew those 1/4-inch tucks in just a minute. It's always nice to mark the tucks with a pen and then with some kind of other marker. And the most perfection way to make tucks is to pull a thread and get your line exactly so you know where to fold it. The next step comes, of course, in stitching the tucks, and you notice we've left long thread tails here because, as my mother told me, you always pull tucks or darts to the back. So here we have pulled those thread tails to the back to tie them off, which makes a perfection finish. And then, after the tucks have been made, kind of scrunch in that extra fabric, put your pattern piece on the top, and now you're ready to cut out your camisole. I am so pleased to have as my guest today Shirley Schooley. Shirley is a creative consultant for the Pfaff Sewing Machine Company. Shirley, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Martha. I am delighted to be here and excited about the things that we're doing.
Oh, well, I'm excited about the pajamas you made, I can tell you. Go ahead and tell us about these tucks.
I will. Well, you know, release tucks are a wonderful design element to put in your garment, but they also serve a rather nice function in that they allow us to add some fullness to an area without the bulk of gathers, for example. So it's a little more sophisticated look, particularly on this beautiful piece. This is for an adult, not for a child, and that's kind of nice, gives a little extra ease around the hips. So the first thing to do, as Martha had told you, is to be sure that you have some kind of marking. Release tucks are often not even in the sense that they do not end at the same place. And because we added these to the garment, to the pattern, we've allowed some space here so that later on we're going to recut this piece after we get the tucks. This piece shows that we have clipped into the fabric just a little bit so that we can start to pull a thread. You will almost always get a nicer tuck, no matter what kind it is, if you can pull a thread and fold at that tuck point. Now, this particular piece of fabric is marked with a marking pen. I sometimes have fabrics that I'm a little reluctant to use even the very best water-soluble pen, and I will sometimes just simply mark it with a pen and pull a thread, stopping just short of that end point so that you don't have a pulled thread going down into your garment. Then as we look at sewing these, now one of the things to always remember when you sew tucks of any kind, this is our center front, is you would like to sew from the side that's going to show, because generally the needle thread is a little nicer stitch than is true of the bobbin thread. As Martha said, you're going to leave long thread tails, because then we are going to take those thread tails, put them through a needle, and then we will pull those threads to the back and tie them off. Now, when you're stitching, if you can move over here to the machine with me, I have actually reversed this little mini garment piece so that for this side I'm sewing from the top, although it is, we're going to, so that when we press it, it's going to go to the back. So I'm going to, now I have this wonderful 1/4 inch edge stitch foot, which really helps. I think it was designed for the quilting industry, but it's wonderful if you have 1/4 inch tucks, because it allows you to put that fabric right up against that and get a perfect 1/4 inch every time.
To use that foot.
It is. The new feet make things so much easier for us
absolutely.
to sew. It's just wonderful. You get the right foot. So you want a regular straight stitch, and on mini garments I like to use, rather than the standard 2.5 stitch, I like to use a 2.0, Martha, because it's a little prettier stitch.
Okay.
Particularly on delicate fabrics. And so I'm going to just simply stitch this just as you would, and you will notice that because I started from the bottom here, that I have left a long thread tail here for the for us to pull this through.
Now, Shirley, one of the things I wanted you to tell us was your technique on this fabulous, this scalloped on the, tell us what you did to make this so nice and flat on silk charmeuse.
Well, that silk charmeuse is a challenge, isn't it? And it has a tendency to move about and so forth. So I took strips of water dissolvable stabilizer, put it at the back, laid the fabric flat on it, then I laid another piece on top of the fabric, and marked
two layers of water-soluble stabilizer.
One underneath the fabric with a little bit of spray adhesive, and then I stitched on top of the water-soluble stabilizer.
And then water-solubled it away.
That's right.
Shirley, thank you so very much.
Welcome, Martha.
And now Shirley has some sewing inspirations for you. Shirley, this is a really precious pillow. Tell us a little bit about this.
Well, I designed this pillow so that I could teach beginning heirloom sewing, because it uses a number of the techniques that we like to have in beginning heirloom sewing. But it's also a great example of something to do if you want to be doing something beautiful and you don't want to spend quite the kind of time and money that it takes to do a gown, or maybe you don't have a reason for that. But this is a great thing to do. Just use those beautiful techniques on the pillow.
The techniques, and I love the lace-shaped heart. You have your puffing, you're butting your laces together, and then your entredeaux, and really you have so many, and your pin tucks. You have so many of the wonderful beginning techniques.
Right, makes a great learning tool.
Tell us about this beautiful christening coat and slip.
This was for our youngest grandson for his christening, and it has, of course, these wonderful release tucks, which allows the skirt to be very wide.
It goes from here to about right here. The sets of 3 release tucks, and then I think the fancy band is fabulous. Come on down here. You have the double entredeaux lace, and especially do I love the cross that is here. And look at the bottom of the fancy band, how you've used your beautiful fabrics. Let me just turn this around to the back.
And this little boy was almost 9 months old, and this made a nice gown for him because he was a bit older.
Look at this, the beautiful cross, and you have a little scallop that goes underneath that cross. All right, now this, I think, was the matching big sister's dress for the christening. Did I hear that correctly?
It was. His sister was about 5 years old. This is a year or so ago, and the lace matches so that it makes kind of a nice set for that very, very, very special time in their lives.
Oh my! And the little blue oval dress. Oh, I love this.
Well, I brought this one along because it repeats a little bit what we did with the camisole only, of course, this is on the Swiss Nalona, but this is always a beautiful technique. And this little dress was a combination. I took ideas from several patterns. Has a little silk ribbon embroidery.
And the little ovals, and my little girl, Joanna, used to call those footballs. So she had an oval dress, and she said, I want to wear my football dress today. Shirley,
I think that's wonderful.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And now Shirley has a So Quick, So Easy, another beautiful project to share with you. Shirley, I think that's the most beautiful shoe bag I ever saw in my life that you have in front of you.
It really is lush, isn't it?
Oh, it's just beautiful.
This would be a great gift for a bride or anybody else special in your life. This shoe bag is fully lined, and I use the pink charmeuse as the inside, and of course then it shows at the top, and match this beautiful silk ribbon with it. Of course, you'll want to do the embroidery before you start sewing, but the process is that you will have 2 pieces of one fabric and 2 pieces of the other, which you will sew together. And you know, this would be a great way to use some of your scraps, if you would, because you'll need 4 pieces, 2 of each color, of approximately 11 inches by 18.5. And when you sew the light colors together, you will want to sew up the seam, leave an opening so that when you develop your casing, and then the top, which is approximately 2.5 inches deep. Then when I stitch my seams, I like to go back and fold back that seam allowance and pin it. If you feel like you want to, you can take a little bit of needle and thread and actually base that down, but you've got to leave that down, or when you start to run your ribbon through, you won't be able to pass those seam allowances.
Okay.
This is sort of a ask me how I know that kind of thing. So when you have, notice here I have 2 of the blue and 2 of the pink. They're sewn together. Here's my opening, and I have pinned down temporarily those seam allowances so that they will stay open for me. Seamed across the top, which is this area here, and then you will come through and stitch this all the way around here, leaving it open, leaving the lining open at the bottom so that you then can turn your bag. When you turn it, then you will just simply machine stitch here. That's at the bottom, and that will not show. When you get through, you will, and at this point, you will have something that looks like this. You will see the lining here, and you will notice that I still have all of those pins at the point where the seams need to be open. At this point, you will take it to your machine and stitch a row of stitching all the way around the top, 2.5 inches down. Then you will come down and do another row, and then you will have a casing for your ribbon.
And then run your ribbon through.
Run that ribbon through.
And you have one more surprise, another fabulous shoe bag.
This is a
Shirley?
variation on a theme, if you would. It's just simply, it's still easy, but it's not so quick, because I have added these wonderful buttonholes across the top rather than having the casing. If you don't have a casing, you don't need to leave those seams open. And when you get all through, you can simply put buttonholes there and run a beautiful cord or ribbon through the buttonholes.
And you've done little buttonholes in your machine embroidered butterfly.
That's right. These are all done on the machine.
And more roses and dragonflies, and absolutely beautiful. You are such a designer, Shirley.
Well, and so practical too.
Just beautiful, and you just do such beautiful work. Thank you, Shirley.
You're welcome.
And now I have a quilting segment for you. This baby quilt is an absolute treasure as far as I am concerned. This was made for one of our grandsons, and his name, William Joseph Collins, is at the top. And then there's this wonderful lace-shaped heart with double needle pin tucks in the middle. And at the bottom is his April in 2006, how much he weighed, how long he was, other wonderful techniques. The technique I'd like to talk about today is one of my absolute favorites. This heart is a magic Madeira, wash away basting thread Madeira applique, and it is so easy, and it is so magical, and it is so quick. Now, Jill, let me just show you how easy this is to do. All right, I'm going to make the heart, and if you've noticed, I have traced the heart only on half of the fabric. You see, I have folded it in half, and you trace it only on half of the fabric. So I've traced my heart, and the next step is to come in with your wash away basting thread. This is magic thread, and you must use it for this technique. And I do put it either in the bobbin or else in the top running through the needle. It doesn't need to be both places. All right, I'm going to stitch around the heart I just drew using the wash away basting thread. Be sure after you do that one row of stitching, you remove it instantly. You do not want to leave your wash away basting thread in the machine or in the bobbin. Remove it instantly and put it in a plastic baggie. Then I'm going to cut away, leaving about 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, the whole inside piece. And then it's pretty necessary to come in and clip the curves. As you can see here, I've done some little clips, so finish cutting all the rest of that away. And now here comes the fun part. I'm going to turn it right side out, and I've got to open it somehow. Now remember the wash away basting thread? So I'm going to take spray starch, and I'm not going to spray it today since I've already sprayed it, but I'm actually going to kind of hold it up and just spray the edge, but I'm going to wet it very thoroughly. And after spray starching, I'm going to press till dry, press till dry, press till dry, or you will cry. It has to be pressed bone dry because I wet it completely in order, of course, to dissolve the wash away basting thread, and it will, and no steam. This is a dry iron. Okay, I've pressed it till dry. Okay, then I'm going to open it up, and here's where the magic comes. Let me pull these pieces apart, and you're just going to watch it. It is so much fun to pull it apart. Pull it apart, and just like magic, the heart has appeared. That's why we call it Magic Madeira. And now I have my Magic Madeira heart. After this, I put the heart on top of the blue. In this case, it was an ecru quilt with the blue. And I'm going to do my wing needle applique stitching with a straight stitch on the inside and the little fingers coming over here to grab it. Now I'm going to use a wing needle stitch. And you have to be sure that the inside of the stitching goes on the inside of the heart, and the little finger goes over and grabs it. I'm using a wing needle because wing needle Madeira is my favorite stitch in the whole world. And the stitching that goes back and forth and then goes over and grabs it, the back and forth part, the straight part, is just on the inside of that beautiful linen piece. This is my Madeira applique stitch. You can do it with a wing needle or without a wing needle. Both are beautiful. And if you want a real delicate look, you will do it with maybe a 100 needle or a 110 needle. Now, one thing for sure, I ask you always to remember, do not sew over pins. Can you see that beautiful stitch? It goes back and forth, and then it goes over. One thing to remember on doing any kind of hem stitching or Madeira applique stitching is to let the machine sew straight. Just hold it and let the machine do all the work. Do not push it, do not pull it. Let's see, let me pull it back here. And therefore, I'm doing my wing needle Madeira applique stitch. Now on this quilt, after I finished the wing needle work, you go in and trim away, and then we're going to come around and we're going to straight stitch around it where it kind of looks like it has a little picture frame around it. I think I'm going to go back over to the quilt and show you how that straight stitch around there looks when you're going to get a little bit of a close-up here. Now that straight stitch that goes all the way around the heart is the quilting. This is the quilting stitch that connects the batting and the backing and the quilt top. I think it is so pretty though. It just gives that double heart look. Isn't that the most wonderful technique, the Madeira applique? And now I have an incredibly fascinating segment on machine embroidery to share with you. like to welcome to the show Denise Applegate. Denise is Sales and Creative Manager of Embroidery Designs for Cactus Punch. Denise, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. I'm so excited to show you. We're going to make some scrapbook cards.
Oh, I love the scrapbooking and the cards. Oh.
So we have a card here. This one is complete. It has embroidery, stitching, beading, and a button on it.
I love that. You know I do.
Okay, and what we're going to do is, here are the cards, how you can purchase them, and they're 3-piece. So when I open this one up, you can see that there's a inner piece to this. So there's 3 sections to the card.
Are those mostly at craft stores, or?
You can get them at craft stores,
Okay.
or photo stores, camera stores.
Camera stores have
because they're
that
for
too.
photographs.
Okay, okay.
We have printable fabric, so you're going to need some printable fabric.
Okay.
Okay. Now here I've already started and I've done the embroidery designs, and there's printable fabric on this embroidery collection right on the CD. So I printed these pieces from the CD.
Oh.
And here I used a sticky back stabilizer. So this has a piece of paper and a sticky back piece of stabilizer to put the fabric on. This piece here is printed with embroidery. So those are the embroidery designs that we've already done.
Now that was on that printable fabric, and that was like out of one of the CDs. You have the
Yes.
fabric to print plus your embroidery designs, but you could use any kind of print you wanted.
Oh,
on
you
there.
can. Wait till you see what I have
All
here.
right. Okay.
Yes. So here's our piece. I have some trinkets, some found objects, double stick tape, and a card. This card is all ready to go. And what I'd like you to see is when we take it to the sewing machine, the 3 sides are opened all the way. So when we get to that part, we're going to sew a decorative stitch there.
Oh, around the edge.
Around the edge. That's what will
to
hold it in
attach
place.
it. Okay.
And then you can
okay.
add these little trinkets. So I have a button that was made here, an old key, or a little trinket. Okay. Now, we took one of your pieces, Martha,
Denise.
and we scanned
look
it
at my
in.
Antique clothes.
Yes, some of your antique clothes. We then took one of our cards, and we can try to figure out where we would like it. So this way you can look at that and figure out exactly how you want to frame that.
Oh, how
Isn't that fun?
pretty.
And then this is a complete card.
Oh,
And this has
how
one of your favorite
much
stitches on it.
That does have one of my favorite stitches on it. What is, you mean around the edge?
Around the edge.
Oh, okay.
So we're going to go to the sewing machine here, and we're going to do a decorative stitch. I suggest not doing a really dense stitch, something that has openness to it. And when you do your decorative stitch, just go all the way around the design and finish at the end.
And you know something, this particular project is one that people who don't have very fancy sewing machines can do. If you have any decorative stitches, or even a zigzag too,
Yes.
but any decorative stitches would be pretty on that.
I think so too.
Denise, thank you so much, and thank you for doing my antique little outfit. I love that.
Thanks for
you.
having me, Martha.
And now I'd like to share a piece from my vintage collection with you. This little dress is just plain sweet. It has the sweetest little curves of lace edging, and something kind of interesting, the dress has no insertion at all. Everything is edging. It has no shoulder seams. There's just a little round circular piece on the shoulders. And look at the little tucks, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and the sweetest little white embroidery. You know what I love too about the lace edging on this dress? It's been gathered very, very full. Sometimes gathered lace edging is not full. It's just kind of skimpy, but I love the way. Come down and look at the skirt. I just love this little dress. The lace edging, 2 rows I might add. 1 row just comes all the way across the bottom, and then the other row it comes up in the little curve and then flip-flops. Well, excuse me, it doesn't flip-flop over, it just ends there. And then there's another little curve that comes down with that gathered edging, and the dress, by the way, is made out of organdy. The back of the dress is just like the front, except it doesn't have embroidery. For my Sewing from the Heart today, I have a letter here from Sis Holland. I belong to a church in Buffalo, New York. We have started programs to help refugees arriving in our country. The refugees are so appreciative of anything you do for them. We started a literacy group to teach them to read and learn English, and we started a sewing group to teach them the basics of sewing. These women had never seen a sewing machine, an iron, or an ironing board. On top of that, they didn't speak or understand English. We overcame that problem by having one of the ladies that had been in this country longer translate for the others. They were so excited to finish a simple bookmark. I'm sure there are many refugees in this country that would love to learn the basics of sewing. Sincerely, Sis Holland. I love your show. Please keep up the good work. Thank you so much, Sis, for writing. And thank you so much for joining me in my sewing room today. I would really like to invite you to come back next time.